Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm discussing a short story called Who Will Greet You at Home. It's from a book of short stories called What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky by Lesley Nneka Arimah. And there are a total of 12 short stories in this collection of short stories. Some are more realistic, where it's just young women dealing with tribulations. Some are more mystical with the subject matter. Some are this unique blend, where it's dealing with certain hardships, but the universe within the stories are unique. And this story, in fact, is a combination. It's about a woman named Ogechi, who wants to have a child. And in the universe of this story, women weave children out of yarn or create them with mud and sticks, or they stitch them with cloth. Basically, they have to create a child with their own items, and then after a year of protecting this child that they create, it will then become a real child. And Ogechi herself was made out of mud and twigs. And so Ogechi goes through different materials. First she starts with a yarn baby, but then it snags and it unravels. Then she tried one with cotton tufts. That was actually the first one she tried. But then her mother, she had just torn it up, saying the child will grow up to be fat and useless. And in that moment, that's when Ogechi writes off her mother. They get into a fight and she just doesn't speak with her anymore. Because in this universe, the mother has to bless the daughter with their child that they create. And people can also sing a song to bless the child, and it is a call and response song. The lyrics are, "Where are you going? I am going home. Who will greet you at home? My mother will greet me. What will your mother do? My mother will bless me and my child." And so Ogechi is determined to have a child. Even though she is poor, she doesn't have much to offer. She works at this salon. It's called Mama Said Hair Emporium. And the woman who owns it, Mama, that's what the name she goes by, coincidentally, she blesses babies of motherless girls. And when Ogechi is sweeping and cleaning up the salon, suddenly she gets an idea with all the hair. She sweeps up all the hair, she washes it clean, and she stitches together a child made out of all this hair. And then she has Mama, that woman, bless the child. But Mama is this greedy character where she won't give anything for free. Even earlier on, when Ogechi interacts with her, their interaction is all about Mama asking her for money for rent, because she happens to be also the landlord where Ogechi lives, in her small apartment. And Ogechi says she doesn't have the money. So Mama says, "Well, what will you give me instead?" And she asks her what she wants. And Mama says, "I want just a bit more of your joy, Ogechi." So in exchange, she takes some of her joy. And then when she goes to bless the child, she takes a bit more of Ogechi's joy. Which is a really clever metaphor, with Ogechi starting out as this hopeful and more joyful young woman, even though she has a tough life. but just taking a little bit of joy, a little more each and every time, then it's these responsibilities weighing down on her. But it's the sacrifices she makes because she wants to have a child. And so then this hair child comes to life. And Ogechi discovers that the child is hungry for hair. The child ends up latching on to the nape of her neck, suckling at it as if it's nursing. And the descriptions in this story, and all of them, they're so well written. That's one of the marks of great writing, where you can feel what the character is feeling. And in this case, when the hair baby is suckling at Ogechi's neck, Lesley Nneka Arimah, the author, writes, "Then she felt it, the gentle suckling at her nape as the child drew the tangled buds of her hair into its mouth. Ah, now this she could manage. But then it becomes increasingly painful for her. And it's as if, when I first read this, and rereading it again now, I could feel it at the back of my neck, like that itching and burning, as if this child suckling at her. You just feel it with those descriptions of it." And fast forwarding a bit in the plot of this story, there are also two young women who work at the hair emporium with Ogechi. And when Ogechi hides the hair child behind these wigs, and later when another woman comes in to pay the debt that she owes Mama, then Mama says, "Oh, I'll give you a wig as a token of appreciation." It's always about exchange with Mama. It's never selfless. It always has to be what's to gain from her. So in this case, when she gets money, then she offers that to this woman who comes in. So she tells one of the shampoo girls that work with Ogechi to go in for the wig. And then the girl doesn't come back for a while. And then when Ogechi finally goes in, she sees that the wigs have been moved where her hair child was, and the hair child was on the ground. And before that happened, though, when I first read this, I thought, oh no, she stole the hair child. But it turns out, actually, that the hair child absorbed this woman, this girl, and took on her personality. And basically comes to life and becomes evil in a way. Because then later, there's instances where Ogechi kisses the baby's stomach and she feels that it's warm. And then when the hair baby suckles at the back of her neck, it hurts more. And again, it's as if that itchy feeling, you could just feel it when the author describes it. I'll read this whole passage. "She wanted more than anything to leave the child in her room, but the strangeness of its cries might draw attention. She bundled it up, trembling at the warmth of its belly. It latched onto her nape with a powerful suction that blurred her vision. This is the sort of thing a mother should do for her child," Ogechi told herself, resisting the urge to yank the baby off her neck. "A mother should give all of herself to her child, even if it requires the marrow in her bones. Especially a child like this, strong and sleek and shimmering." And then, toward the end, in the final scene of this short story, Ogechi wakes up in the middle of the night and the hair child lunges at her and pulls at her hair and is basically this needy, all-consuming being that's just causing Ogechi too much pain, and has become this source of ache and agony for Ogechi. And she fights with it for a bit, and then suddenly she picks up a candle, she brings it to the hair child, and she burns it. And it disintegrates. So then when it's just a pile of ashes, here's the last paragraph of this story. "This she knew, how to make firm clay, something she was born to do. When the mix was just right, she added a handful of the ashes. Let this child be born in sorrow, she told herself. Let this child live in sorrow. Let this child not grow into a foolish, hopeful girl with joy to barter. Ogechi formed the head, the arms, the legs. She gave it her mother's face. In the morning, she would fetch leaves to protect it from the rain. So it's so tragic, but it's this harsh reality for Ogechi. That the child should be a reflection of her. That she doesn't have an easy life. That this child will one day realize the sacrifices she made, because it is a metaphor for motherhood itself, the sacrifices mothers make for their children. And a unique thing about the universe within this short story that I realized after the fact, reading this, is that there are no male characters in this story. It's all women that they create the children out of whatever products they have. One of them, actually, there's a girl who has a porcelain child. So it's just a really unique story. Heartbreaking, yet hopeful. And there are similar tones in a lot of these stories. The title story, What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky, that's a really interesting one with a great premise. It's kind of this post-apocalyptic world where there's been this elimination, and the story itself is about people trying to calculate this formula for human existence. And the main character in that story, Neoma, she is what's called a mathematician, and she can calculate and see people's grief and take it from them. It's such a really fascinating concept. It seems like it could just make a great TV show, something like that. You could just go inside this world and really live in it. So this is just a great book of short stories. They're all so well written and interesting. And getting into now why I bought this book in the first place. It has to do with a recommendation from the creator of one of my all-time favorite TV shows. And that is none other than Raphael Bob Waksberg, the creator of BoJack Horseman. He recommended this book on Twitter a couple years ago, and since I'm such a huge fan of his work, I figured, oh, that seems like a great book, I'll buy it. And it is, obviously. But what's really awesome is that I actually ended up meeting Raphael Bob Waksberg a couple years ago. It was September 2017. It was my first visit to LA, and it worked out that it coincided with the opening of this art exhibit featuring fan art from the show BoJack Horseman. And quick side note with that, the level of talent was unbelievable. It was so amazing seeing everyone's incredible artwork from fellow fans of this amazing show. Also, that was the opening night, so it was packed, and the line was down the block, which was really cool. Just goes to show how devoted the fan base is and how much people respect and love this show. So it turned out that Raphael Bob Waksberg was there, and he was right outside chatting with a couple people. And I recognized him. I knew it was him. And I was just kind of frozen in place. I was like, oh my gosh, do I go up to him or say something? I felt so scared for whatever reason. I need to get over my nerves, that kind of thing. But my mom was with me, and she just walked right up to him. Like, thank goodness for her, otherwise I probably wouldn't have even had the courage to talk to him. But she went up to him and she said, flat out, "Are you the creator of the show?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Oh, my daughter is such a big fan." I was like, I must have been blushing. Oh my goodness. But then she just stepped aside and I just walked up to him. I said, "Hi, Raphael." I shook his hand. He asked me what I was doing in LA. I told him I was actually supposed to attend a writing expo, but it had been canceled. I ended up going to a different one, so it all worked out. So I was just there visiting. And then I told him that I was reading the book he had recommended on Twitter, and he said, "Which one?" Which made me think, oh man, I didn't see other ones he had recommended. But I told him, and he said, he was happy to hear that. He said, "Oh, how are you enjoying it?" And I had read at that point a few of the stories, and I said, "I'm really loving it so far." And the first story alone had really packed a punch to me. I told him the ending, it was just so unexpected. I won't spoil it because it's one of those where you have to read it yourself. But that's a great one too. It's called The Future Looks Good. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I know." And he was just so easy to talk to. And I didn't even talk about BoJack Horseman with him. I was just chatting about the book. And he said, "Well, enjoy the gallery. Thank you for coming." And I said, "Thank you." And I shook his hand again. So it was just really awesome meeting with him and just chatting with him for a minute, maybe a minute. Really nice guy. And what's cool is actually, I just found this out recently, he has a book of short stories of his own coming out in June called Someone Who Will Love You in All Your Damaged Glory. So I'm definitely going to purchase that, and if I ever have the pleasure of meeting him again, I'm sure I'll chat with him about that. The other thing too, though, I never actually told him my name, and yet I shook his hand twice. I was just so excited to meet him. But if I ever meet him again, I'll actually introduce myself properly. But he's great. I love BoJack Horseman so much. If you heard me discuss it back in September, it's one of my all-time favorite shows. But getting back to, of course, this book, as he recommended it, I recommend it as well. It's so well written. And the thing I have to say also about short stories in general is that oftentimes I feel they tend to pack more of a punch than even novels can do. And what I mean by that is the fact that they're obviously much shorter in length. You have to just get to know the world and the characters much more quickly. Dialogue, in a sense, is just much sharper and to the point. And in this case, too, with this book of short stories. So engaging. And with each short story, it works on their own, but I could just go into each of these worlds, like each one of these stories, the 12 of them, she could expand on these worlds and make them full length, and they would be amazing, I'm sure. But obviously they work as short stories. I'm just saying, I'm just so interested and invested in the characters and the concepts for each of these stories that, just like I said with the story What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky, the whole premise for that, I could see it as a TV show. It would be fascinating. So that's just something I really like about short stories. That they just, in general, could be so gripping compared to full-length novels. Though I just appreciate works of fiction in general, obviously. But with these stories, just highlighting a lot about human existence and these relatable things of grief and loss and growing up. So, really great book of short stories. And with that, that's going to conclude this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. You can follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Storytelling Saga, as well as on Twitter at Storytell Saga. You can also send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by leaving me a message in the contact section of storytellingsaga.com or by sending me an email at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next week, you are more beautiful than Cinderella. You smell like pine needles and you have a face like sunshine. I'll be discussing Bridesmaids. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.